when we first moved to Japan and began studying Japanese language, I decided quite quickly that I wanted to study flower arranging, or ikebana. And for some years, I studied while we were living in the city. And I would take a bus across the town, walk a few blocks. I'd walk past this old antique shop where often I would pick up a plate or teacup on my way home. Our chests here are filled with such teacups and plates. And each week, the teacher would have a table that would be covered with the branches and flowers that we were to use for the arrangement that week. For a long time, I made judgments when I saw the flowers. Some of the flowers I didn't like, and I resisted working with them. I was in my 20s. And for me, that time was full of experiences, making decisions about what I liked and what I didn't like. And this isn't a bad stage to be in. I think it helps us develop taste, helps us develop that aesthetic sense that can open our eyes to beauty in unexpected places. But that choosing, liking, not liking, can also close our eyes. My mother taught music appreciation. She, in her life, was this way as well, not just with music, but she loved to open her students' minds to the different beauty of inaccessible music, music that some might even say hurt one's ears. She always tried to understand and appreciate the music my brother and I liked, the music that came out of his bedroom in such a loud way that it felt like our house was pounding sometimes. She encouraged us not to reject things because we didn't like them. And we find rejection a lot in young children. I knew a child once who hated all manner of vegetable. I wonder how that would have gone on in my family. I can't imagine. But anyway, they only ate meat and bread. But later, I came to see, as I studied ikebana for years, in fact, I was studying twice a week for about 3 years, I learned that flowers had different qualities, and that it wasn't my work to like them or not like them, but it was my work to bring out their uniqueness in the arrangement that I made, their uniqueness in color, in what I put next to them. Also, their uniqueness in the way that they framed the empty space, the space that is called Ma. And during this time of sheltering, I believe that we are being challenged to look at this flower communion in new ways. These are times, I believe, when it can become difficult to love ourselves. We see so much more of ourselves. We can't really get away from ourselves. And I invite you to imagine the flower. Let's imagine the flowers that we might be, imperfect, with leaves that might have some holes in them from bugs that have visited over the years, or there might be a big chomp in one of the petals from something that walked by in the night. One way that we are very different from each other at this time is our sensitivities, our allergies, our looks at ourselves when we think of this COVID-19. Lou and I are around the same age. We eat mostly the same food. Our families have a lot of the same illnesses in them, or health, um, or longevity. And yet she is much more at risk than I am, invisibly at risk, because of asthma that came to her in Japan quite inexplicably. And I have had to consider, as I have told you in other services, that I must be careful so that she feels safe. We are being called upon to listen to how we each feel differently right now. And as we drove through town, I invite you to look at the Courier sometime, because a photograph of part of my face in a car is on the cover of the Courier. It is right before the technician stuck the swabbing thing up my nose to see if I have the COVID-19 virus. And I hope that you do that too, because it's very important. It's again about the common good for us to be tested so that we can have an idea of how widespread the virus is in our community. But when we were on this trip out, we drove through town and we saw that something was beginning to happen. People are wanting, as all of us, we're wanting, we're hoping, we're wishing we could get things back to normal. But there were people acting as if things were normal. There were people walking in the plaza without masks. There were big shiny trucks parked around the plaza. And I wonder, if all humans are flowers, and I'm thinking of my own reaction as I was walking through, what flowers are you seeing when you see the plaza crowded with people who think that the virus is gone? I was feeling unsafe. I was feeling angry. I was feeling like, aren't you watching the news? Yeah, I was feeling some pretty negative feelings. And now, as we celebrate the flower communion, and as I look back on this, I realize that what I was experiencing going by our own courthouse plaza, is indication of the work that I need to do, and perhaps you need to do. As we look at our first principle of Unitarian Universalism, it's about respecting the worth and dignity of all people. It's about respecting who they are. And I believe it's about doing that work of separating who people are from what they do. The actions of people who are not wanting to be careful, who feel that this time is over, who are going to make social distancing impossible around Lynx Lake, for example, where we drove later after the test. I didn't see one mask. I don't know if Lou did, but we were both looking. And I know that we need to see people who are doing these things. We need to see their worth and dignity, even when we don't agree with what they are doing. This is important work. We too are being challenged to be different, to be wearing the only mask at times, and to accept the people who are acting in ways that are threatening the health of everyone, who are threatening the common good. I'm not telling you to accept what they're doing, but to be careful, to keep watching yourself and your heart and your mind, that you are treating them thinking of them with worth and dignity. I find myself going back in time to that freezing cold of January or February, standing with all those people who are wanting to turn this county into a Second Amendment sanctuary. Only this time is different because I can't have that connecting conversation with the woman next to me who told me, and I told you, that the people on the liberal side lacked manners and called people who thought as she did rednecks. I invite you to release that word from your vocabulary, because as we hope to keep expanding our community, we hope to keep expanding the we of who we are. I want to let you know that that word is a message to many that they are not welcome, or that their relatives are not welcome, or that their class or education level is not welcome. This needs to be a time for us to rethink these words that we use. And I've only heard that word used 3 or 4 times in our community, so I don't know how widespread it is. And there are so many other words, and I invite you to find the words that you might use. During this time of sheltering, many of us have time to read. And I invite you to read a book that was the common read, I believe in 2016. It's Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. His work is incredible around people who have been imprisoned and who are on death row, and helping people prove their innocence, not always successfully helping people. But the part I want you to look at, the part that moved me, I mean, there were so many parts of this that moved me, but I think a part that might help us right now is how Bryan Stevenson transforms, but how he is incredibly able to treat people with respect and dignity. He talks about treating someone with respect and dignity who is a white guard of a prison, a man who makes sure that he knows that it is his truck in the parking lot that is covered in white supremacist slogans, and who insists on strip searching him. Read that story, for that is an extreme version of what I think sometimes we encounter in Prescott. But read that story and the way that Bryan Stevenson is able to accompany this man. And finally, that man accompanies one of the prisoners and is able to sit in the courtroom as Bryan Stevenson speaks of the man's life who is on death row. And the man realizes that his life too had many things in common, that he too went through the foster system and that he too struggled with poverty. And so, and I think that those times, those openings are only possible if we learn to expand our we. And at the same time that we are expanding our we as we go by the courthouse plaza and other places, because I don't know how this is going to unfold. I've heard that Costco is going to be asking people to wear masks from tomorrow as they are shopping. And certainly Karen Hagsberg, who had the experience of working in Costco and was so relieved to stop because she felt unsafe. That this is a really good step on the part of Costco to keep their people safe, to keep the common good, to keep our community safe. That there are people who are wanting to to go against this. And I don't know how far this will go. I think many of you have seen pictures of what is happening in Michigan. Anyway, there is a lot going on, and we are being asked to continue with our sheltering, to continue wearing the mask. And I wonder how this is for you. In other situations, for me, protecting myself would have been hard. It seems different with this pandemic, but I have been looking back on experiences that I have talked about, that experiences that I was proud of. I remember one where somebody who had a very dirty hand offered me a sweet, and in my family system, we are supposed to eat everything that is offered us. It's part of it's a family rule for the Willises, and I ate that sweet, and I remember. It was actually a time, it was in a place in rural India, and it was during a time when there were diseases going through, and I shouldn't have done that. And I was proud of those stories. I'm proud of those sort of tough macho stories. And now I'm being called to be different, to wear a mask, to protect the people I love, but also to protect myself. And I invite you also to think about your own resistances to taking precautions, because these are very important. It is true that the people of Prescott may remain safe if we stop taking these precautions. It's possible too that if we as a community get together soon and sit 6 feet from each other, it's possible that no one will get sick. But it is also possible that if you don't wear a mask and we come together too soon, even wearing masks, that some among us will die a very horrible death. And that will involve not only the person who dies or the people who die, but all the people who then will have to move into work, people with families who will have to be working in hospitals and working with people who are contagious. You know, it is hard for me when I have a cold to call someone up and say, I'm just not feeling well. Let's postpone our meeting. But you know, I don't want someone showing up to talk with me who then sneezes at me. We often feel like we're being kind of good when we show up in a dangerous way. And we are not. We are shirking our duties when we do that. And we have to act differently now. And I am thankful to you that you are. And I'm talking with you in this way today because of what I saw on the plaza and what I think will become a kind of movement around us to stop keeping each other safe. Let us resist and continue. I thank you for the good work that you are doing, for the good work of injecting each other with happiness. I have seen it in emails. I have seen it in the small groups that gather together. I thank you for that. And I think as these differences in how we want to respond to the crisis emerge, let us think again too of this beautiful field of flowers. Let us think of this bouquet, for its beauty needs all kinds of flowers, even flowers we don't really like. As Unitarian Universalists, let us courageously take up the challenge of this time. Let us continue to expand in our hearts what we think of as we. Amen. And may it be so.